Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Transatlantic Call-In Show. This is the place where you get to call and ask two trans people all of your questions about anything and everything trans-related. So whether you are a parent, like we had last week or a couple weeks ago, who maybe has some questions about what their kid is getting into and how concerned or not concerned they should be, we'd love to talk to you. If you are a uh, uh, anti-trans person who wants to get smacked around, you can try to humiliate us live on air. I know Ben is going to be bringing the hammer tonight, so good luck. You might get a beating. Either way, we would love to talk to you. I am your steering the ship today, but with us is the always welcomed. We miss having him on more often, but he is out there doing important things. Dr. Ben. Dr. Ben, what is up?
We're here. It's a time.
It is time.
It's Thursday. It's later on in the week. It's interesting, like the mental shift sometimes, like from the beginning of the week where you feel mostly great because the shit hasn't hit the fan yet. To then like Thursday and you're like, you're getting closer to burnout, and then like it's not even Friday yet, so like you don't have the day off next, and it's life. It's life, I guess.
Yeah. I think your life is probably more exhausting and more prone to nearing burnout than most of us watching. I think becoming a doctor has to be probably one of the hardest things you could do. So yeah, I mean, props to you for showing up and being willing to talk to us while all this is going on. But yeah.
So yeah, I will be bringing the hammer tonight if people say stupid things. And it'll be entertaining, to say the least. It'll be super entertaining. Maybe not for the people calling in, but bring it. If you are in the side chat, and I don't see anybody stirring up trouble yet, but if people start stirring up trouble, I am coming for you. So just watch out.
Did you hear that? So we do have lines open. That number is 720-619-2288. So if you would like to call in, please give us a call. Or if you are out of the US, there is a web link in the description for a toll-free call. Although we are having some audio issues with that, so you might want to, if you're going to use that, be at like a proper setup with a good mic and everything. Just to hopefully remove other possibilities of audio issues going on. But yeah, so every week we like to do a little poll just to kind of talk about current events, things that are going on in the trans community, or to just kind of talk about general topics related to trans issues. So we can take a look at those polls. For now, last week's poll reads, do you think you need to understand trans people's identities to believe we have a right to exist free from discrimination? 7.7 thousand votes, 96% say no, and only 4% say yes. There may have been comments in the comment section that indicated why they said yes, but I looked through and I did not see any. I saw people say things like depends what you mean on discrimination, or it helps to know their identity, but I didn't get the impression that those people actually voted yes on this poll. Just that they maybe didn't like exactly how the poll was worded, or they didn't feel like they had enough information or something like that, which is a comment we get no matter what the poll says. So I tend to just kind of glaze over those comments. But the vast majority of people understand the point. You don't need to completely understand someone's identity to accept them as a trans person, or to believe that, like, hey, I might, I'm not saying that I think this, but somebody might say, like, I don't understand non-binary people. I don't get it. It's weird to me. But even if that's true, those people still deserve to have access to housing and education and like working places that are free from discriminating against them on the basis of their identity, is the whole point. So yeah, I don't know, Ben, if you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, it should be pretty straightforward of a question, except for the people that, maybe had a different interpretation of what we were getting at with the wording of the question. But I feel like if you're going to support humans in general, this is a question that you should respond no to. Like, you should be able to respect human existence no matter who the person is. Like, if you're going to say that, like, people of cultures you don't understand deserve to exist without discrimination, then you should also let that apply to trans people, and all
Yeah,
types of different people. Like the weird double standard we get a lot of times. Like, people will say it's just too hard to, understand what's going on with trans people, or like it's too hard to communicate with these people about whatever. But then, like, they don't have any problem with similar barriers with other communities of people.
right,
And so it's evidence that it's very targeted in that way. Um, so, like, for people that would say yes to this in like an actual, like, sense of they do not believe trans people should exist without discrimination. Um, I just have a lot of questions for them, and that's why this show exists. Because if you are one of those people, tell us why. Because I'm kind of curious about how you answer other questions that are similar. And if you take out the phrase like trans people and you put in any other demographic of people, like, would you answer this question the same way, or would you magically change your answer to something else because it's not the trans community?
right.
And I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, and that was kind of what I wanted to get at. We've had a few callers over the last like 6 months or so. I mean, we've had them since the show started, but who will say something to the effect of like, "Hey, like, listen, I don't want to discriminate against anyone, but I just really don't get it." And it's like, okay, is it our job to make you get it? Do you need to get it? Or can you just accept that like the default expectation for people in like a democratic, free society, a humanist society would be to say, until you've demonstrated that you don't deserve those freedoms, you just get them by default, right? Like, we're just not going to discriminate against an entire group of people until there's like really sufficient reason to think that it's warranted. And even then, I would be dubious about how you could implement get something against an entire group of people. Like,
Yeah.
individuals don't tend to like always conform with what we see at broad strokes, and so yeah, I think
Mhm.
it's been an approach I've been taking, trying to focus more on this kind of conversation, because I think it usually appeals to more of a common ground that people have a really hard time saying yes to this question, right? I think there are some
Yeah.
trolls who will give into that no matter what you do, but in general, people
Yeah.
have a hard time saying yes to this question, even if they're bigoted, because they foundationally don't think that they're being bigoted, and so yeah, I think it is a good way to appeal to people and get them kind of already seeing agreement there, and then hopefully that can build a foundation to work from.
Mhm.
And why is my phone giving me notifications? Mute that shit. Show just started and I'm getting buzz. Uh all right, so that was last week's poll. If you missed the chance to vote on that poll while it was still active for this week, that is okay because we have a new poll that is a similar kind of softball for you guys. Do you want to read this one, Ben?
Oh, good. Did you engage in blasphemous celebrations this past Sunday? And this could be taken in multiple different ways because, um, not only was it Trans Day of Visibility on the same day as Easter, but you can approach this from several fronts, like by being trans, by not being trans but still celebrating Trans Day of Visibility, but also by not even acknowledging trans people and still just like being an atheist on Easter. And like, there's plenty of different ways that you could have been blasphemous this past Sunday. And I think this community is probably going to overwhelmingly respond with yes, just knowing our audience here.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I I guess I did engage in blasphemous celebrations just because I was a trans person on Trans Day of Visibility.
True.
And I did make an absolutely like outrageous internet post about how, like, trans people should be allowed to be alive, like,
What?
which is wild. I know, like, that's just too radical. Um,
Revolutionary.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, just, like, side comment kind of about all this, like, the fact that, like, if you as a trans person ever post on the internet something that's just, like, basic human rights things, like, it's not like, there's nothing profound about saying that, like, trans people deserve to be alive or, like, insert any community here, like, there's nothing profound about that statement. There's nothing, like, at least it shouldn't be out of the ordinary to make statements like that, but then, inevitably, you get, like, all of the people not from that minority saying, like, "Oh, man, that's so brave, like, good job, like, way to say something," like, it's like, how is this something out of the ordinary? Like, how is this something that is deemed as, like, super radical and out there and stuff? Like, it's just amazing that
Yeah.
we're not there.
Yeah, I mean, the response that we were seeing from conservatives and political commentators to was essentially Joe Biden acknowledging that trans day visibility exists. Uh
Yeah.
they were framing it as he was declaring it like nationally as like forget Easter, it's trans day. Which is not what was happening at all. But the response was just like complete and utter outrage, which is just so silly. Because the entire point of Trans Day visibility is just to sort of take a change in pace from how the other like trans focused holidays are. You know, there's the oh god, I'm
Mhm.
blanking on it. The one where we
Yeah, like,
recognize trans
the
people who have
Trans Day of
been
Remembrance. Yeah.
yes, trans people who have been murdered or lost their lives to like transphobic violence. That's pretty bleak, and I don't think a lot of us like to sit in the thought about that, even though it's important to acknowledge and to like recognize, why that happens and like what intersectional factors are compounding that. Um, yeah, Trans Day visibility is really just a day to acknowledge that trans people exist in the public space around you and that, we are living lives just like anybody else. And that was too much for the like entire conservative movement. Donald Trump, even at a rally, like lost his mind saying, "What was Biden doing declaring it Trans Day?" Um I called it blasphemous on his Truth Social, so that was kind of why I chose blasphemous in this particular
Mhm.
instance. But yeah, I mean, I don't generally celebrate holidays personally, but whenever somebody gets like their panties in a twist over something like this, I just have to be like, well, now I really want to celebrate Trans Day of Visibility like extra hard just because it's bothering you. Like just to point out like that this should just be another day to you. This should just be another holiday. You don't have to acknowledge it's Trans Day of Visibility. But the fact that other people are is making you upset. Like, why? That's such a leftists get painted as snowflakes and so sensitive because people just don't agree with us or don't accept our viewpoint. And I really don't care if you don't accept me or accept my viewpoint. But the fact that other people are practicing trans day visibility sends the like entire conservative movement into a complete fit is wild. Like,
And it's wild too that, like, for being, like, a Christian majority, like, they don't even regard other religious holidays as, like, on the same level as trans, like, specific holidays. Like, I don't see anybody freaking out about Ramadan,
right.
like, in the same way. And, like, so it's disproportionately hateful against one group.
Yeah.
And it's just it's funny because we all know kind of in this group how logically inconsistent a lot of their rhetoric is. But, like, their positions move all over the place. And, like, this holiday matters so much because of this thing, but and if you ask them why it matters so much to them, they often go back to religious reasons for labeling it as, like, bad and sexually deviant.
Mm.
But then if you ask them about like why they disagree with other religions, or like why they don't like Islam, or why they don't like other branches of Christianity. It's because like they'll link it back to sinful behaviors and like blasphemy, but they don't regard those forms of blasphemy as the same as this one. Like there's disproportionate reactions to what they claim to be like equally bad.
Yeah. And I think that's in part because I think they're generally like not aware of when other holidays line up, because all of they also, it's ironic because Trump said, like, oh, we're going to declare it Christian Visibility Day or whatever. I can't remember which late host it was, but one of them made a joke about, like, oh, wow, another Christian holiday. We definitely need that.
Right.
Not enough of those. Like, Christian holidays are the predominant holidays we celebrate, at least in the United States. And so, like, I think for a lot of it, it's just that they're not aware that those other holidays exist. How many times have other holidays coincided with a Christian religious holiday that they have not lost their mind about? Probably hundreds of times in the last like 20, 30 years, right? But no, this one was the one. Yeah, it's obviously just like an attempt or an opportunity for them to dig in on anti-trans rhetoric. I don't think it's particularly, I mean, I think it's kind of funny, to be honest, the reaction.
Yeah.
And I also think to most reasonable people, it's just going to make them look ridiculous. Like, people were pointing out how many other like niche holidays are on that day, and there was like a handful of them, but nobody was complaining about that. Yeah. So those were those polls. If you want to get in on that conversation, you can check out our community tab on the Line's YouTube page. So you can go vote and leave a comment on how you're feeling about that, whether or not you celebrated. Maybe answer some questions, because surely there's going to be people who are like, I don't know what this Sunday was, and they're going to like have forgotten it was Easter. So maybe you can give some gentle reminders while you're there. Real quick housekeeping before we move on to calls. I see we do have a couple callers on the line, but we also have open lines. Again, that number is 720-619-2288 with a web link in the description. We have been having problems here at the line. We have been having a consistent demonetization thing, and we've done a few tests, and it seems to be like targeted, because when we're removing other words from the description and whatnot, it's not changing anything. So we have been really trying to push to y'all to consider joining our Patreon. That is by far the best way to support the Line Network and the hosts on the line. That we get the the biggest chunk of your dollar actually goes to us when you do it that way. So that is like the most efficient way to support us. But there's also other things you can do, like you can check out our merch, onlinemerch.com. If you saw the little waiting screen before the intro started rolling, you can see a few other of our merch items. Here, I might even, well, actually, no, I can't pop it up because we're going to lose our voices. But yeah, you can get the awesome birthday merch from Matt and Jimmy. Also, I have to say, I've bought merch from a couple creators before, and the quality is bad a lot, but these shirts are super comfy. Whatever they make them out of, it is excellent. So highly recommend checking those out. And yeah, I'll do the weekend shows after we take this first call, but let's talk to Evan in Virginia. Pronouns are he, him. Evan, you are live on the line. What's going on? Talk to us.
Well, I had Christmas dinner with a whole bunch of friends. Most of my friends are fairly liberal, but I have one unfortunate friend that seems to be going down the anti-trans rabbit hole. And when we were at the party, I did a lot of asking questions to kind of unearth exactly what her problems with trans healthcare was. And it was mainly her focus was on, oh, the poor children are being forced to become trans and they don't really know what they're doing, yada, yada, yada. A lot of those questions were pretty easy for me to bat aside, and I have lots of research that I can throw at her in a dialogue, especially since I follow Erin Reed pretty closely, and she provides a lot of this kind of information. But there was one thing that she said that really bothered me, and there was one issue that I didn't know enough about to really comment. The thing she said was that puberty blockers were equivalent to a lobotomy, which she obviously doesn't know what a lobotomy is if she believes that, but I've heard that said by other transphobic people before. And that was what really bothered me, because I kept on pushing her and saying, hey, there are kids with precocious puberty that get puberty blockers that's researched. Are you saying they're getting a lobotomy? And she really wouldn't answer. She just kept on deflecting by saying, oh, I don't know a lot about that group of people. I just want to prevent trans kids from getting puberty blockers because lobotomy. And it
Ask her
didn't seem to make a whole
ask
lot
her what
of
the
sense.
fuck. Ask her what the fuck she knows about any of these medications at all. Like
Yeah.
the
She
two questions
doesn't
I'd
know
ask her
anything.
is no. Ask her what the fuck she knows about any of these, and ask her if she doesn't know fuck all about any of these, why is she thinking she gets to make those decisions? Like, it's just amazing to me, the mentality.
I kept emphasizing the fact that the kids are not the ones making the decisions. I even said, the kids can't just
No,
go
but
to a
don't even
hospital
be that
and-
nice about it. Confront her, say like, what the fuck do you know about this? Make her answer, like make her admit what she does or does not know about it. Make her attempt to answer if she feels like it, or make her admit she doesn't know. And then like make her confront the fact that she is trying to tell people what to do on a subject that she knows absolutely nothing about. Like make her acutely aware of that point.
I'm uncomfortable confronting her that way because everything I know comes from you and Arden. Because I watch your show quite frequently.
Here's the thing though. You don't need to know much
Right.
to say that somebody else who also doesn't know much shouldn't be making decisions. Like especially like it's
my
it's
main,
like if
my main point
if
on
Arden,
that issue is, go ahead.
Oh, I'm just like thinking like I know nothing about money. If somebody else, like let's say if I don't know how good Arden is with money, but let's say like if Arden didn't know anything about money and then said like she thinks that people shouldn't be allowed to do XYZ like with their finances because whatever the fuck reason. I don't need to know much to be like, hey, what do you actually know about this thing? And then I don't need to be an expert in it to say, hey, maybe you should shut the fuck up and listen to an expert about it. Like you don't need to have all of the answers to point out where somebody is like talking out of their ass.
I think also
she was definitely talking out. Go ahead, Arden.
Sorry. I was just gonna say it sounds to me like she's maybe also got like two of their talking points confused. Like I know it's really common to say there's chemical castration, and I've heard some gender criticals say that like, oh, it also stunts your brain development, but I haven't actually seen good evidence of that at all. And if she's going on the brain development route, that is nothing like lobotomy, and development would return to normal as soon as they ceased use of the medication, which according to the protocols they would have to, whether or not they went on to transition or continue on in their assigned sex, gender associated with their assigned sex. And if they're going in the like chemical castration route, you could just kind of make fun of her for being like, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying maybe that's like the best rhetorical route. I don't necessarily know what the best rhetorical route is, but you could kind of point out like you don't even know your talking point. Like you're getting your flawed talking points confused. Doesn't that make you think that like maybe you aren't the best person to account for what trans people need?
Yeah, I think a point of clarification then. She was the lobotomy claim wasn't her thinking that the drugs were causing the equivalent of a lobotomy, but that there once was a medical procedure called a lobotomy that was accepted by the medical community and is no longer accepted by the medical community, and that's the link she was drawing. When she focused on the chemical effects of puberty blockers, she kept mentioning the business about bone density. And I know that when it comes to puberty blockers, they don't recommend you take puberty blockers. Ben can correct me on this if I'm wrong. But puberty blockers, if you take them for more than 2 or 3 years, there's the danger that you could have some bone density issues.
Well,
And
that's what we think for right now. There's probably a longer time frame that is safe, but the current guideline is that this is the time frame that we are confident isn't problematic. There's probably a longer time frame that also isn't problematic, but we don't have sufficient evidence yet to say that a longer timeline actually isn't problematic. It's like, and this is where it's hard to communicate science sometimes, because like we're
Yeah.
often more conservative because of what the demonstrable evidence is, and we can have
yeah,
an idea and we can have select cases where we see evidence that it's fine, but it's not enough to make a generalized statement saying that this is generally okay for the majority of people undergoing this treatment. So yes, you're
well,
correct,
that's
like in
helpful.
the majority of
That's
it.
Yeah, that's helpful. And I realize that the whole business about being conservative in your estimates, that resonates with me pretty strongly, because I have a tendency to be that way when I talk about science in general. And when there were things that I knew was not the case, and she would immediately back down because she's anti-medical anyway. She even mentioned, oh, my uncle went and got a colonoscopy and had all sorts of problems, and so she wasn't even recommending men get colonoscopies. And I was like, I've had 3 of them. So, are you
What
telling me
problems I'm curious about the problems she was worried about. Is like it's funny. A lot of people that
Well, one of
have that
the
line of thinking will think that will kind of assume that the problems that they found on the certain things were caused by the thing. Like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I've read a thread before, because you're bringing up dislodges something in my brain, where I've seen some trans people online complain that they've had difficulties, and immediately some of these doctors that aren't very well informed immediately go to, oh, it must be the HRT or the puberty blockers or something else that's causing this harm, even though they have no evidence to prove that that's the case.
Yeah, it's garbage. People are garbage, and like we need to be those of us who know better. Like, need to be aggressive in combating that. Because like this is a point where like I understand wanting to be kind to your friend because they're your friend, but at the same time, like people should
She's
feel
been a
bad
friend
about
for a
saying that.
really long time. Yeah,
Well, but people
I
should
think
feel
what
bad about
happened.
these things, and like this isn't an issue to make them feel good about having that position, and like we shouldn't be just politely saying things all the time because they might interpret that as like, oh, like it's we're going to agree to disagree to keep these viewpoints, and like that's not always the right route to
Yeah,
go down.
I mean, to be fair
the
to you,
place.
Evan, it
The,
does sound like you tried
yeah.
to challenge her, which I do appreciate, because a lot of people might just like let it go. This really reminds me of I don't know if you've heard the Tim Minchin song Storm. Um it's a really hilarious. Tim Minchin does comedy. I don't know if he's a good person or a bad person. I have no feelings about that, no comment about that, but he has a really funny song called Storm, which is about like him and his girlfriend going over to a party with a friend and
Oh
his
yes,
girlfriend or
I've
something.
heard
And
it.
yes, and
Yeah,
she's like
I've heard it.
into astrology and all these other weird things, and she's a huge
Right.
medical skeptic. It sounds like that's what your friend sounds like, almost like exactly. Um, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
The one thing.
Go
The
ahead.
one thing she mentioned that I didn't know a lot about was she mentioned that
Ooh, you cut out.
she was that
Oh, I'm sorry, Evan. Can you say that again? She cut out. You cut out. You said the one thing she mentioned that you didn't know.
clinic in Missouri that got overwhelmed the clinic and was basically making the claim that she believes that all clinics are like this. Do you know which one I'm referring to? The one in St. Louis?
I have not heard about this clinic, but also
Can you be more specific?
There was a oh gosh, what was there was a small gender clinic in St. Louis, Missouri, where they had an overwhelming number of patients, and somebody named Jamie Reed, a former case manager, went public with explosive
Oh, that
allegations,
one.
claiming in a whistleblower.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I know which one you're talking about now. Yeah.
Okay. It's always been my, I mean, there's always the question of whether the person was being truthful or not. That's always an issue there. But one of the things that I tried to emphasize to her is that even if there was problems at one clinic, that doesn't mean that that's the way all clinics behave.
Also,
But I didn't even know anything about it. That one came out of the blue for me because I'd never even heard of it before.
so I just Googled it, and they mentioned how he blew the whistle on unquestioning affirming care. And it's like, okay, if you're objecting to unquestioning care, like, one, I'm not convinced it's unquestioning. They might not be questioning the patients, but I'm almost positive the professionals are doing questions behind the scenes or evaluating the patient
Right.
behind the scenes.
Like the case manager is not in the room during the patient encounter. So like the fact that somebody works at a clinic does not mean that they are participating in patient care.
Okay.
So like people who are
That's a good
social
point.
workers or like case managers, they're not doing patient care. Like they're there for, unless it's like a social worker that's doing therapy, which like they're of course in the room doing therapy, but like they're not in the room when the hormones are being prescribed. Like they're not in the room like for the
Okay. That's
H&P. Like
helpful.
that's not their job. So it's absolutely BS that person like is making claims about what is or isn't happening in those rooms unless they're in the rooms with these people.
I
Like
also,
it.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to
Oh
interrupt.
no, just keep going. This is just like people are frustrating from this point. It's just like a lot of people that don't know shit saying shit that they can't back up, and then people are running with it and impacting entire communities and hurting people because of it.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
the absolute Dunning-Kruger and the absolute like disregard for humanity and like Dunning-Kruger of like their knowledge is just, it's impressive to me how like people can feel okay with this. Like
Yeah.
I'm in a mood today. Well, like y'all kind of know that from the beginning of the show, but like
I don't mind.
I just also want to point out that like this clinic is in Missouri, which is like a pretty deep red state. And while I
Yeah.
don't know this individual, like let's not pretend that even if she was voting Democrat or they are voting Democrat, I don't know their pronouns, that they haven't been influenced by heavy anti-trans bias their entire life, right? They're living in communities
Right.
that are going to be surrounded and
Yeah.
entrenched in that. Even in the left-leaning cities in a lot of red states, like, well, sure, you might see more acceptance. It's not like we're immune to bigotry in these areas, you know? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I also, I think it's interesting. While generally, I have mixed feelings on the whole being friends with bigots thing. I think there can be great utility in that in one sense, but I also think, like Ben said, it's important to challenge these people.
Yeah.
But this kind of stuff your friend is bringing up is like deep gender critical lore. Like your friend is not just
Yeah.
passively having some medical skepticism. Your friend is actively consuming anti-trans content somewhere on the internet. There's no
Yeah.
way that she's exposed to this kind of information without that. So I would.
She has to be getting being part of some. She has a friend that's in New Jersey that is a total MAGA nut, and I think the biggest problem with her is that when the pandemic happened, she was spending lots of time with this other person, and they're great friends, and I, because it really sounds like they're involved in these gender critical communities, because just the fact that she used the word lobotomy, the only time
Yeah.
I've ever heard anybody use that framing before is like from the Linnemans of the world.
Like,
So they go ahead.
no, I was just gonna. Yeah, it's to use that kind of language and to cite these kind of sources suggests to me that she's got some deep, like, cult like content that she's consuming, and that puts up a high red flag for me. Like, I don't know. I might be interested in,
Yeah.
if you have another group dinner with friends and her there, to kind of casually ask what kind of stuff she's watching and kind of expose, to the
Yeah.
entire group, like, oh, this friend of ours is like going down Tucker Carlson levels of rabbit hole batshittery, and that should be highly concerning to all of us. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I have. It's always hard to give advice on things like this, where people are asking for like, how should I, strategically, rhetorically approach my friends and family members? Where it's like, I'll give you my thoughts, and Ben gave you his thoughts, but like also, it's kind of individualized because like your strengths might not be our strengths, and what might appeal to this person might not be what we think will appeal to this person, and so I definitely would, it's hard to give you what I think are strict boundaries, but hopefully between like the two of us and kind of how we would handle this, you have some ideas about how you can address these things in the future with her.
Yeah, you gave me a lot of good ideas and things to focus on, so I really appreciate it. And to a certain extent the outrage, because I was trying not to be outraged with her. I was trying to be patient to a certain extent, because it's one of those things where she was saying this stuff and I was like, well, because she was talking about grooming kids to be trans or gay, and I was like, you honestly believe that? And the thing is that several friends that were at this party were teachers. And later I was like, oh, I should have said, do you think so-and-so is like this? Or do you think, because I was trying, she was making a lot of outrageous statements that had me really worried about where she's getting her information from. And it may ultimately be a lost cause, but I wanted to be at least able to credibly go and make some arguments. And you gave me some information that I can chew on and approach her. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, best of luck, Evan. We'll talk to you later. Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
All right, real quick before we get to the next caller, I want to let you guys know what is going on in the week of shows coming up here on the line. So next show on the line will be this Sunday. Will be Matt and Paulogia on the Sunday show at 2 p.m. Central Time. Sunday After Dark, our new encore Sunday show talking about theism and religion, is going to be Aaron, Adair, and Aron Ra, I believe. Sorry, it scrolled away. Yes, Aaron, Adair, and Aron Ra. Also, as we start to expand our programming, you're going to notice some of the familiar faces who we've brought on regularly are going to be full-time hosts. So I know Aaron Adair, Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels is coming on full-time, and then we've got Josie here at Takis is going to be coming on more, so hopefully you guys will be excited to see all those faces a lot. Monday on Skep Talk will be Aron Ra with Professor Dave. That'll be 6 p.m. Central. Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central will be Chewed Gum with Eve and Alyssa, the OG team there. Next Wednesday's Hang Up will be Phil Ferguson with Matt Dillahunty. And then next week's Takis, Dr. Ben will be back here with Katy. So that will be at normal time, 2 p.m. Central Time. Yeah, also, I mean, I don't want to give you guys too much excitement about it, but we have floated the idea of maybe doing a second Takis episode throughout the week. Maybe at a time that would be more accessible to different audiences. So you might notice a poll on the community page in the next week or so that will be like what times would be useful for you. Because we're just kind of, with how well the Sunday Encore show went and how we get a very different crowd when we do Takis at 5 than when we do Takis at 2. And so we kind of wanted to experiment with that and see if maybe you guys like that. Will that get views? Will we get better callers and how that goes? But yeah, all right. You ready to move on? Take another caller, Ben?
Let's do it.
All right, let's talk to Onni. Pronouns are she, her in Colorado. Onni, you are live on the line. What is going on?
Hi. Gosh, sorry. I am, this is going to sound so stupid, but I am autistic. So like I'm kind of fawning right now. So I'm trying to kind of get back on task, but
Okay.
I am about our daughter. She came out to us a year and a half ago. So she herself has been trans for 2 years. We're super lucky that we moved from Michigan to Colorado 10 years ago. And she's had a really good transition. So for us, we had a couple of appointments. She, felt really encouraged. I mean, she just had a whole new light once we had that new appointment. I want to say that was about 6 months ago. Unfortunately, we had lost medical care for about 6 months. We were able to afford the medications because it was hormone blockers, but we've been waiting to have kind of like, might be with psych, and then obviously someone who helps with teens. And so we were lucky enough to, now that we have insurance on the kiddos, to, get her that appointment. She's getting it next week. But because it's been so long from like the first appointment we got to have with them to now, I'm just trying to think of, okay, now we have more stuff that we need to like through. I myself had last year and found out, oh, I'm autistic. All this shit makes sense now. And now we're seeing it in our daughter. And I mean, it just kind of made sense. So for me, it's like, okay, she's trans, she feels comfortable, but, she wants to take some of those next steps. For me as a parent, knowing that I have autism, knowing she has autism, and we're going to, try to get her tested though for it, it's like, what's the most important going on here between her going on hormones and taking that next step, and then also, okay, what do we do on the psych side of things? And so that's kind of where I'm at. And I myself am gender fluid. I consider myself queer, but I'm married to a man who's fantastic, but we have huge source of friends, but we don't have any friends just yet, and we don't know any other child. So she also, for some
sorry,
context,
I don't mean to interrupt. It kind of cut out,
had,
so I heard, we didn't hear it. You said we don't have any something, something, something. Like, I think you said trans friends,
what I was
maybe?
going to say is we don't have any trans friends. And of course, the ones that we do have, they're all adults. And so we don't have any friends that have trans kids themselves.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Ben, this sounds like a question kind of directed in your way.
Yeah, so anything that I say is not medical advice, just gonna throw that out there. Because I'm gonna
Disclaimer.
say some things and they might not be completely applicable to your situation. They might not be the right direction for you. So like don't take what I say as like this is absolutely what we need to do. But like it is a balancing act, and different actions in each one of those spheres is going to impact others, and I really wish that it wasn't that case. But our society is garbage, especially with anybody that is outside of what is considered the norm. And the more like intersectionality there is, the more barriers there are to other types of treatment and support. So like my recommendation in this case, and again, like this is just my opinion, and there's not a good right answer. Having a diagnosis of autism at this point in time is very, very limiting in how people are going to treat gender dysphoria, and it's going to severely limit options, especially in states that are limiting it for people in general. But neurodivergence is something that people are hinging on, trying to revoke autonomy for people with like neurodivergent traits, and especially people with documented diagnoses. So like this is something where you have to weigh out like what resources do we need and what support do we need, because if this is somebody who like really needs certain social support for neurodivergence, like that's one thing. And like that might be a case where you might need to have a label associated, but like that would have to outweigh like the detriment of like being in a situation where you wouldn't have access to medical care, in the sense that many people see those labels and they are no longer comfortable prescribing, or they're no longer comfortable referring. And I hate that we're in situations like that. But as the laws get more and more sticky and more like smuggling in of certain language, like it's going to be very hard for people with those intersections to get care for both. And especially like there's certain like neurodivergent labels that are more accepted at this point in time than others. And again, I hate that that's a thing. Autism is one of those labels that people love to weaponize. And so like it's very tricky. It's very tricky to say what is the right step that is going to do the least harm. Because this is a case where like we're not necessarily looking at optimization with this answer. Like this is like the bare minimum of risk mitigation is where we're at, unfortunately. And I think if this person can do like well without having that neurodivergent label, it will be easier for them to get gender affirming care. And I think that will often improve a lot of other things in the fact that they have some security in that point. But it's going to suck either way. And I really hate to say things like that, and I hate that we're in that situation. And it's a point that's been very demoralizing for me, and like as a person who is at an intersection of neurodivergence and like gender diversity as well, and somebody trying to fight this battle on multiple fronts. But like the current state of things is not good for any people with those labels. So it's something you're gonna have to like really think through. But I would like, as much as I would love for people to be able to learn more about themselves and like have like all the supports that they need, like I want to get to a place where those supports are not stigmatized, and where like normal variations are not stigmatized, where people can still have their autonomy no matter who they are. And like we unfortunately don't live in that world right now, and it is absolutely like depressing on every level.
Yeah, I mean, if I can
Yeah.
just
Oh,
chime
I'm sorry.
in,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think Ben makes some good points about like, you know, I do believe there are some specific legislations that are targeting gender affirming care access for people who have autism diagnoses. It's probably not the case in Colorado. Colorado's pretty left.
Colorado's better, but thinking about just like life trajectory, like the things that you do now will stick with this person forever. Like if you think about where things could go, like, and I hate that that's a thought, but like it unfortunately is.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we kind of.
oh, sorry, I didn't get to finish my point, so I was just gonna I was gonna say, I mean, I think that's definitely a risk to consider for sure, and also it's worth noting that there isn't really like a medical necessarily application that can be done to help in the case of like autism in any way. So you can just like kind of apply all the same things that you are applying for yourself with the diagnosis to this person without necessarily not having to get them diagnosed, I guess, if that is like the route you want to go. You can kind of use a lot of the same techniques to help them like manage their life. But sorry, go ahead, Oni. I want to let you respond to all that.
Yeah, no, like that was another good point, because, like I said, we're lucky that we moved from Michigan to Colorado. If we would have stayed in Michigan, like my best friends are reaching out and they're like, "Oh my gosh, we miss you so much, but we're so happy you're not here." And those things where So she does have a diagnosis of the ADD, ADHD. She got that when she was, I think, like 8. She kind of had back then the typical kind of like mentality. And for her, she doesn't mind when we, go back if, we don't really use her birth name anymore. We do the chosen name, but she's like, hey, those stories, I felt valid. She felt fine with. And then when she went through puberty and all these other things, but like I said, she went through little boy, rambunctious. We went to the doctor, found out she has ADD, ADHD. My husband has ADD. I did not know, like I said, until I was 38 last year, that I have ADHD and very heavily on the autism spectrum. So now that I'm able to apply these things to my daughter, but at the same time, I myself learning some good coping, watching the show here helps a lot. Like I said, I detransitioned. It was 12. I think it was 14 when I was like, yeah, I'm an atheist, in a very Bible belty kind of area. So that's why for me, I get a little nervous because yes, I have some help and I still need to work on myself to a certain degree. But now that I'm seeing my daughter go through these things, she's going through puberty and it's like, holy crap, like that was the same kind of puberty I went through. So the fact that it's so relatable, we feel very confident. Her doctor feels very confident. But like I said, we're getting into these sessions and it's like, what's the importance? So I feel comfortable enough with the care team, ask them, hey, what do you think? And bring up some of these points, open conversation, and kind of see what they think. If they're like, oh, yeah, if you already have this ADD, ADHD thing, and you have a 504 in place for her schooling and everything, like maybe we don't need that next step if they think it's detrimental. Like, no, it should be okay for her care. Maybe that is something that into laws and everything just to kind of see how the state is going. But I have heard, like what Dr. Ben had talked about with, well, hey, if you get these extra, mental health screenings, they might not take this other transition seriously when, like I said, when it's your own child and it's just like, wow, she's totally comfortable in her body and look at how different she is now and the way she's dressing and carrying herself, like this is the right direction. Have the kind of mental health help that I needed, the way that she has at her age. So that it's an unfamiliar road for me, even though I have all these similarities with her. So it's like this weird bizarro feeling for me. And I just want to make sure that I have extra knowledge to weed out. At least I have that extra knowledge. And like I said, it's just hard because our social group is very and very open and accepting. And so it's like, okay, I'm not being challenged. So I don't know where some of these hiccups are, which is the main reason why I was calling, is because I'm like, we're getting ready to go down a road.
Yeah.
I've been down in my social circle and, same kind of thing. So, yeah.
I think, like, it sounds like you're doing a great job already. I mean, I would, trust your healthcare providers. It sounds like they're pretty good and they're not like, engaging like a watchful waiting kind of anything like that. It sounds like they're pretty in line with what my understanding is for the medical standards for dealing with trans kids. So it's I would trust your team and trust that you are trying to have deep empathy for your child, and it sounds like you're going to be doing a lot better than a lot of other parents are for your kids. So I don't know. I think you're on a good path, and you don't have to worry about too much. Unfortunately, nobody writes manuals for this kind of shit, so it probably does feel very foreign and a little scary to go down. But I think it sounds like you're doing a good job. Yeah.
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 Is there anything else you wanted to add on to that? I'm sorry, I know it's like two calls in a row where I've been like, I don't know if I have specific advice for your situation because it sounds like it's very personal and individualized. Unfortunately, that is the case often when we get into these sort of advice call realms. But yeah, if you want to add anything else to the call, please do.
Yeah, I guess one thing, since if you guys have the time, I do have one family member we don't see very often. It's mainly through Facebook at this point. That, of course, even though they know Ella and how long her journey has been going on, like we got a Christmas card using a dead name and saying the boys. So I was just kind of nice about it. I messaged her, and all I got was a simple like, "Oh, okay, thank you. You're thanking me for pointing out you being kind of shitty." So the reason why I bring that up is that actually part of our life? Is that something that's hindering right now? No. But when it comes around like these holidays, like we're all atheists in our household. Like my grandmother loves and respects that, and she doesn't push on anything. But I have this one aunt who's a little further removed, my dad's sister, and she just, so it's like, when I think about it, I'm kind of on eggshells because I'm like, I have no idea how to approach this because right now it's all through Facebook. But if we meet up at a family reunion or go to do something else, like I know she's going to be there. So,
yeah, in my opinion, the best thing you can do is to just directly confront her in front of your kid. That kind of thing can be really good. And it doesn't have to be necessarily, hostile or anything, but when I'm thinking back to being a kid, when I was, for the period of time that I was out as trans, there wasn't as much information as there is nowadays. My parents were doing the best with like absolutely no help. At least my mom was. I can't speak to my father. My mom was doing the best she could with no help, but she kind of engaged in like when I would get misgendered by family, kind of being like, oh, like don't push back on it because like it's just family. Let's just keep the peace and kind of get through. And I don't know. I think I would have really benefited from seeing. And I love my mom. She does great. I know not shit talking my mom at all right now, but I think it would have been really nice to have seen her like be like, no, that's she her to my uncles and to my dad and to the people in my family who misgendered me. I think it would have been really powerful for me to be like, oh wow, my mom like not only does she accept and love me, but like she's got my back. Like she's out here smacking down bullshit like in real time. I think that could have been really, really healing to have seen, or not healing, because there probably would be less damage if that had happened in the first place. But I don't know, Ben, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's the right move. I mean, hopefully they'll keep responding with, "Oh, thank you for correcting me." Like if they respond like that and you feel like they mean it, I think that's okay to just keep gently correcting them. If they start being shitty about it, then you can be more aggressive in confronting them, or just like don't be around them. But I think like if they're just taking a while to adjust and it seems like they're trying, then I think it's okay to just like mention it to them like, hey, no, it's actually this, and then just let them be aware in the moment.
Yeah.
okay, yeah, no, that helps a lot. So,
Cool. Thank you so much for calling, Oni. I'm sorry we weren't able to give like maybe any more like guidance, but I really do think it sounds like you're doing a great job and like you are more than equipped to handle giving this kid a really good, secure sense of self. So best of luck.
awesome. And, don't feel bad. You guys did more than enough. I think reaffirming, because I myself deal with PTSD. So, I don't have my parents in my life to help reaffirm. Like, that's a good decision. So, yes, I have my husband, but we're in the same boat. So, you guys just kind of reaffirming it. Trust me, it helps.
Cool. Good. Well, I'm glad we could help. You have a lovely day and call us back if you have any other questions.
Okay, awesome. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey.
All right, we're just going to keep rolling. Coming up next, we've got Nick in Canada. Pronouns are he, him. Has a question about the difference between wanting to present more masculine and feminine and feeling like a different gender. Doesn't see the difference and would like to discuss it. Nick, you are live on the line.
Hi.
Why don't you let us in on what's going on here?
Okay, so I realized after I was talking to the screener, it sounded more adversarial than I intended. It's not that I don't understand the difference. I'm trying my best to understand a life view that is not mine, and I just legitimately do not get it.
Sure.
I know, sometimes I'm a moderately typical guy, whatever. And sometimes you show up, you want to be like, at the gym or something, you are a little bit bigger by accident just because you're who you're around, or you're somewhere where you're supposed to be a little bit smaller on purpose or something, so you do that. But I don't understand the difference of trying to be, or sorry, feeling. And this is obviously not universal. It is individual experience, and I'm sure maybe every 5 or 10 people who choose to transition or feel, or they don't choose to feel. By the way, first time calling in, and I guess I'm nervous like this because you don't want to misspeak, and however many people are there.
It's all right.
Nick,
we have this
Nick,
line here for you to say things, so no worries.
Yeah, Nick, do you understand what it's like to be a cis woman?
No, I don't at all.
Do you care? Does it ever bother you that you don't understand what it's like to be a cis woman?
Like most teenagers, I thought about it a couple times, but outside of that, not really. No.
So why does it bother you so much that people have different gender identities than you? Like, why is it preoccupying your thoughts so much that people could have a trans identity?
I guess I kind of want to understand. If this wasn't such a politicized thing, I probably wouldn't feel too much of my thoughts. But as it is, I just feel like I want to try to understand. It's not something that I do understand, and I can't just ask anyone who might seem like they have leanings of this kind of thing and just corner them, because individuals aren't representatives of their group. But this call show, I can ask like maybe your experience, and maybe that makes sense. But, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a valid thought. It's just like at the end of the day, you're not going to understand what it's like to be a trans person because you're not that. And like in the same way, I'm not going to understand what it's like to be a cis man or to be of a different nationality. Like I'm not going to understand those things. And I think it's okay to want to become aware of other people's perspectives, but like I don't think the goal should be to like understand them at a core level. Like I think there's certain steps that you can like maybe you're trying to get at like how do I empathize with people more, and I think like that's maybe a direction where we can be productive and say like, okay, what are these certain experiences that maybe I don't understand, and maybe less of the question should be like, I don't understand why you feel like this type of person, but like more questions about kind of their experience going through life as a certain thing. Like there's certain like I think a lot of people just don't even think about their gender on a regular basis. Like they just are themselves, and they live their lives as themselves. And very rarely do they ever think, "Oh yeah, I'm preoccupied with how much of a man I am today." Like most people don't do that. They just exist, and they do what they're comfortable doing, and it's just natural for them. And then we use these labels to, communicate to other people kind of a descriptor of how we feel. But like probably more important are the experiences of being those people. Like the key things about being a trans person are kind of like the barriers that we face, or like the reactions we get in public, or like the way we participate in relationships, particularly from a trans culture or like an LGBTQ culture thing. But that's not all trans people are part of like queer culture, and there are variations with that. But like each person's experience is kind of more, I think, what our understanding needs to be geared toward, and less preoccupied with like, I need to know what your brain is thinking right now. Like I need to know the inner workings of your mind. And I think maybe from the way you're asking your question, I think maybe that's like you are heading in that direction of wanting to empathize more in that regard. I'm just trying to help out a little bit with like maybe this particular thing that we're like distressed with maybe isn't the point that we need to be as distressed with.
Yeah, I so co-sign that. I don't know if you were watching the beginning of the show, Nick, but we talked about last week's poll question, and that was the whole point of the question was like, do you need to understand trans people's identity? Like, because I would wager you like I get it, even just from like a human curiosity point. Like we want to understand, right? And that's, I think that's fair to want to understand, but like I also don't really understand what it's like to be a sports person. Like I don't like working out. I don't like playing sports. I don't like watching sports. The whole experience is miserable to me. I get irritated with people who are like super into it. I find it so irritating. But also like I don't care, like I have things I like, I have things I do, I have things that make me feel fulfilled and seen, and I have my own communities. I don't need to necessarily understand or engage with people who don't click with me, and that's okay. And kind of building off of what Ben said also, I'm sure there are plenty of cis men whose identity you just fundamentally don't understand. Like, I mean, there are some very, very flamboyant, like, very feminine presenting men who are also like completely straight, and that is just a thing that exists out there. There are people who would fill that profile, and you might not necessarily understand them, but like I think that's kind of, I think Ben's so right on to say that, like, I think it's a bit of a red herring. Like, I appreciate why you want that, because there's just that natural human curiosity, but maybe shifting that focus might help you achieve a bit of that relief that I think you're looking for in searching for the understanding.
Well, I do have a tendency to overanalyze a lot of things, but sorry, I'm looking at the screen expecting you to not be 20 or 30 seconds behind. Yeah. And yeah, no, I tend to do that. It's something that comes up so much, and I'm trying to, like I've already said it pretty much. I'm trying to understand, and the only way I can understand is to get data ostensibly, and since it's all anecdotal, it's just comes from that. And
I don't know if I would say it's all anecdotal. I think if you want to think of it in that way, I think you can recognize that, like, we know that there exists a population of humans in almost every society that feel an incongruence in their identity that is typically associated with their birth sex. And that for these people, they experience relief and improved quality of life when they're able to access ways of expressing their identity and not oppressed for it. Like, does it have to be more complicated than that for you? Like, because we've had a few conversations lately on the show about, like, how you know that you are ontologically a woman. Like, how do you know that, like, the woman switch is actually the one that's turned on in your brain, and not just that you feel so feminine that you as a man just might as well be a woman. Like, and I feel like that's a really useless distinction to make, to like figure out why people's identity are the way they are. It's easier to just go, it doesn't really matter why they are the way they are, or how we can know for sure that the way they are. We know that the most reliable way to figure it out is to ask them, and we know that this population benefits from this sort of treatment, right?
Yeah. I guess at the end, I suppose it is, what would the discongruity between the, okay, so let me just do a little paraphrase. Generally, people don't rock the boat ostensibly, and I'm sure you guys are frowning in about 20 seconds on the screen. Don't rock the boat of norms unless it's really not fitting for them. Like, and I get it to certain other things. Like, I watch the atheist shows. Holy stutter. Sorry. I watch them and I agree with that, but I talk to all sorts of theists online, usually in a bit of a upset thing, because partially I'm trying to understand them, and I don't understand how they logic their way around certain things, and I'm trying to understand them too. And different economic systems and whatnot, like,
sure,
what, now isn't working, and a lot of people are joining unions and doing stuff because the system isn't working for them, so they're trying to find a better way. This is at an individual level. Someone finds that their biology or the groupings, so their body, and what society is expecting of them is not working for them so strongly that they're like, no, this is not it. I'm especially, well, I presume, Aaron, you did it when
Arden?
it was even less
With a
acceptable.
D.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
You did it when it was even less acceptable and typical, and that would be even more surprising to
Yeah, I mean,
know you're doing something that feels right for you that is going to go so against what, and you know there's battles you're going to have to fight about it just walking down the street sometimes or talking to relatives or whatever. So that weight of cost, I guess, is the why. I understand it's important to the individual. I understand that it has this root within them. Sorry, I believe I understand it has a root within them. And it has the cost, and but it's powerful enough that someone's going to push through. And that is, I guess, maybe the large motivator I'm trying to figure out.
I think the motivation can be different for different people, and I do want to give Ben a chance to jump in because I've been talking a lot on this call. But the only thing I have to add is, like, just imagine, Nick, you as a person, who you are, how you've been your whole life. Imagine none of this, your sense of who you are has changed, but your whole life, people for some reason told you to go to the girls' side of the room when they split boys and girls up, and they made you wear dresses even though you were like, I don't think I want to wear that. And they were like, no, that's what girls do. You have to wear that. And they made you, you felt pressured to get into maybe makeup or like really feminizing how you look, despite the fact that you did not jive with that at all. Like that's what it felt like. I've said before, it felt to me like I was a little girl who was being forced to engage with like all these hyper masculinized things. Like my dad would bring me to, in the winter, we would drive out on the lake because I lived in the far north. We'd drive out on the lake and go to an ice shanty with one of his friends, and we would ice fish for hours, and they would talk in the most sexist and misogynistic ways about women. It was disgusting and despicable, and I, a little girl, had to endure that. Like, that's the kind of way that this fucks you up to the point where you go, whoa, listen, whatever. I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience, obviously, in this way. Not everyone is exactly the same, and everyone's motivation is going to be slightly different. But like that for me was like also going into puberty, realizing, oh, the trajectory my biology and society is putting me on is to end me up a person like my father. And I so vehemently do not connect with that in any way, shape, or form. I don't even think I necessarily connect with being a woman like my mom is. But I could tell that being a woman, being a female, being a girl, that was a direction that made me feel like I could breathe and like I could be myself. And at every step, people encourage me to be like doubtful of that, because how could you possibly really know? Kind of like you're saying, like how could you really know like what the real motivation is? Yeah. And when I actually just trusted that, like the data suggests, people who are in my position benefit from transitioning, my life improved massively. Like just gargantuan leaps and bounds to my mental well-being, my ability to work, my ability to like just be productive, a member of society, just skyrocketed. And that's what the data has been saying for like decades upon decades. And yet we're still having the same conversation here. And it's a little frustrating sometimes as a trans person to be like, why do you need to know? like we've covered this so many times in like medicine and in society. Like just accept that people like, you're not going to get everyone's life or what their motivations are or whatever. And just kind of be like, hey man, like I don't get it, but I don't fucking need to get it. You keep doing you and I'm going to keep doing me, and we'll both be better for it. But Ben, I know you look like you've been wanting to jump in.
Yeah. I mean, like my whole thought on this too, and this is also like going with the fact that I'm neurodivergent, and like a lot of us tend to be, but the norms of society are made up.
True.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're made up. So it's like, yeah, okay, this is stuff that people have accepted is just how things work, but like the reason why this stuff is in place is bullshit. Like people agreed that it was a thing we were gonna do, and so we do it. So like there's really no like evidence or like data behind the majority of things we do as a society. We just do it because that's what people like to do. So like a reason to like yeah, there's a lot of social pressures, and it sucks when you kind of get stigma and you get ostracized like for going against certain norms. But like a lot of my motivation for not going with the social norms is because like they're dumb, they're pointless, like the rules are made up, the points don't matter. Like this is an improv game that we're just all dealing with and trying to yes and until we die. Like there's when you kind of understand how arbitrary everything is, it's like, why do I need to so religiously adhere to these societal norms when they suck? Like they don't work for like they work well for a set number of people, and like those people don't have a problem with it, and those people are usually the ones in power, so they keep these things in place. But like, what is the benefit to a lot of these social norms? Like nothing. Like what is the benefit to having men in society wear like pants and shorts and not being allowed to wear a skirt, and like the benefit of having women wearing skirts? Like there's not, that has no impact on fucking anything at all. Like that's a stupid norm. Like a lot of gender norms, like especially a lot of gender norms, and this is where like I go down the rabbit hole of like ideally like gender abolition would be a thing, like in my mind. Like things should, like gender should be something personal to you and not something that we regulate as a society, because like societal gender norms are like stupid. Like it's so stupid. And I think once you get to a point where you are skeptical of the things that humans do, and we stop revering things just because they've been in place for a long time, you kind of get over that reverence like pretty quickly, and you're like, oh yeah, like sure, I'm gonna like and yeah, there are very realistic consequences of like career loss, family loss, et cetera, and like those are the things that keep people from fighting against the system, and it keeps people from taking action against this stuff. But like as far as like rocking the boat, like I don't like I've already rocked the boat enough. Like I don't care if I keep rocking it. Like I don't care about this boat. Like this boat, like this, it's a terrible boat. Let's get a better boat.
Sucks.
This boat sucks. And so like it's hard to understand when the system works well for you and you haven't, reached the point where you question that to those extremes. But like it doesn't take much convincing for somebody to like go against those norms. I think.
Yeah. No, I understand in most of the system, and as I was saying, but just physiologically, I feel like pants and skirts got messed up somewhere. Seems like
yeah, I see what you're saying. Sure. Yeah, I appreciate the endeavor, and I appreciate you calling in here. I totally agree. If you see someone on the street who might ostensibly be trans, it's probably not great to corner them and ask them these kinds of questions. That is what this show is for, is to hopefully take that pressure off of trans people just living their lives and direct it here towards us, where we specifically make time for that. But yeah. I appreciate the endeavor, and it's always, I relate. I want to understand things. There are definitely just certain things that I've had to just be like, hey, I don't understand it, but also, like, I think, even the worst people are probably deserving of, like, freedom from discrimination and basic human rights, and that's really all trans people are advocating for, is, like, we just want to be able to be us without people butting in, without the government or private individuals making it their business, and just let us live life. Yeah.
Yeah, ideally have to be any days of awareness or any special insignias or anything. Everyone will just be people. I agree with that completely.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to live in a society where we don't need days of awareness. However, I will say, considering the society we live in is so vehemently anti-trans so much of the time, I think having a trans day of visibility is deeply needed. But I agree. I would love to live in a world where Hunter Schafer, a trans actress, got shit over the weekend for saying, I've been offered so many trans roles. Stop doing it. I just want to be offered like regular the roles you offer any other women. I just want to move on with my life and not have trans be like the focus of everything. And to be clear, the trans community and the queer community are awesome. There are so many great parts of the queer community. I love that about us, and I don't think we should be ashamed of it. And if you want to take a bunch of trans roles, you absolutely should, and you should be proud of it. But also, for those of us who also just kind of want to have, like for me, I would love for my transness to be as inconsequential as my hair color. Like, people aren't making my hair color their business, right? And also, my transness should not be any of their business because it has literally no impact on you at all. Yeah.
All right. All right. I'll on that. But unless you guys got another thing or you want to say, I think I'll let you go and get to another call.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of another way for me to make the question or a way we didn't quite get it and you want to call back, please do. We appreciate you waiting on the line, and thanks for calling, Nick.
Have a good night.
You as well. Bye.
Before we move on,
go ahead.
Before we move on to the person in the side chat who's saying that what I said is a matter of idealism rather than reality, and needs a stronger basis in the material world. Number one, I said that it was an ideal. So you're not listening to my argument. I said it was an ideal, and the fact is, you need to have the thoughts of what should be, so that we push those boundaries. Because if you're just like, oh well, this is what we got right now, and that's all it's ever gonna be, that's we don't make improvement. There's a lot of things that we're making progress on now that were considered idealistic in the past, and we're not anywhere near where we need to be. But if we just say, yeah, well, that's not realistic, then people don't take action. And yeah, there's some things that we can say that are maybe not super logically feasible at this point in time, or maybe even in the near future or even beyond that. But people with broader ideas and more abstract views of the way the world could work is how we innovate. It's how we improve. It's how we move forward. So
Absolutely.
I think discounting things that are idealistic, I think it's important in the moment to say, how do we take this idea and implement stepping stones in that direction? There's points where you need to make realistic goals with that as the ultimate end goal. But to discount it and say we should only be focusing on material reality, I think is stupid. It's as stupid as how arbitrary our norms are. So you can say that. I don't give a shit. And I'm fiery today, but
yeah,
I'm ready to fight the system.
It's so weird to criticize that. I mean, I've said on the show before how I don't necessarily know if I want the society that a lot of leftists online are advocating for, but I think socialism as a framework is a really good we're noticing inequality and wealth disparity, right? That's a problem. Maybe we should find ways to implement it. I'm not saying we need to snap our fingers and build and have that society overnight, but it influences the decisions we make and the policies we develop for people to have better lives. Idealism, I mean, America wouldn't exist without idealism. America is literally built on the notion that, we were being oppressed on religious basis. let's have a country where people get to elect their leaders and where people get to, practice whatever religion they want and not be discriminated on that basis. Like, America literally is a nation built on idealism. So to criticize idealism seems very strange, especially when we're talking about like understanding why people reject social norms. Like,
Right.
what other than idealism would influence like that behavior, right? Because you're like going, oh, I'm unhappy with this way that things are. I want things to be like this. So I'm going to live my life in such a way that pushes society in that direction.
Yeah.
Weird. Okay, we have one caller left on the line.
Anyway, we have a call.
Before we take this last caller, I want to remind you guys we will read super chats live on air at the end of the before we wrap the show. So any super chat of $5 or more, we will read live. If you didn't want to talk live on air, or you have some other thoughts you want to share, that is a place that you can do that. So $5 or more super chats we will take. But until then, we're going to wrap up the show today with Matt in Wisconsin. Pronouns are he, him. Matt, you are live on the line. What's going on?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call.
Yeah, thanks for calling. Oop, that is not the right nameplate. Why don't you go ahead and give us your question while I get that fixed?
Sure. So I'm a trans man, but unfortunately, I don't have any other trans masculine friends. All of my other friends are trans women and non-binary people. And when it comes to dating, we've had kind of like a disagreement in kind of how to approach that in terms of like coming out to potential partners. So, for example, like on my like dating profiles, I don't list that I'm trans. I'm not out to most people, and I transitioned a while ago, so it's not clear that I'm trans unless I come out. So, I guess like a question that I've had and that we've had some disagreements about is like, at what point in the dating process should somebody out themselves? Like, is it wrong to start dating somebody without disclosing that, or like even discussing potentially dating someone without disclosing that, or like is it different depending on like what stage you're transitioning? I guess we've just kind of been having disagreements about that. And I was curious like what your thoughts were on like when somebody should disclose themselves in this matter where it kind of does matter if you're trans or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on this is that I don't know that there is a moral obligation in play. I think honesty is always going to be a better foundation to have a more trusting relationship, for sure. And so if you want to be upfront, I think that can be an advantage in some ways. But I also completely know from experience that there are so many people who, if you don't disclose that you're trans, you go on a few dates, they realize they fucking like you and they're attracted to you, and then you tell them, they're going to go, okay, that's a little overwhelming, but I think it actually isn't a problem for me because I really like you. Like, a lot of people will think that they have a problem before they're in the situation, and when they're actually in the situation, they don't have a problem. I don't think there's a moral obligation in play. I think if you want to disclose early, there can be advantages to that. I think if you don't disclose, there can be advantages to that. I do think if somebody says, I don't want to date a trans person, that is a huge thing for me, and then you don't disclose,
Right.
that's probably a moral obligation on your part. But otherwise, I don't know. I think do what makes you feel good. Ben, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in agreement for that. I don't think there's a set like moral thing of like you have to disclose at this point in time. Like, I think that's up to the comfort of the individual. Like, cis people aren't expected to disclose their fertility status like on the first date. And like that can be a deal breaker for a lot of people. So like why are we mandated to have like a higher standard than everybody else? Like, it just seems unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right. Because I've also had the thought too, like, well, if somebody like, you can still ask, like, you can kind of get a sense of somebody's politics, within, pretty quick after meeting somebody. I was like, well, if I'm in a situation where I'm uncomfortable with them, or I feel like they not like that I'm trans, I can just like bow out and I never have to have that confrontation. Like, I don't know if I'm just kind of being like, avoidant about that, but I always got a sense like, well, if I feel comfortable, I can tell them. And if I'm not comfortable, I will just end the thing. And I also feel like there's kind of a difference with like, I don't know, I didn't really date when, before I transitioned, but I feel like I don't feel like I'm in danger dating the way that like my trans femme friends are, or that like some of my like cis female friends are, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like the situation is kind of different for them in terms of the danger for disclosing versus myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably true that there's a slight increased risk for like trans femmes, but I don't know that there's no risk. I mean, like, you know, you always have like the, oh, my brother found out, or maybe this woman's just like a total muscly badass and just wants to, well, I wouldn't call her a badass, a muscly psychopath, and would like be violent about it. I don't know. But I don't think there's any moral obligation to disclose. I think it's probably a good thing to do, to be upfront about it, but I completely am in agreement with you, Matthew, that like I think you can feel it out and see if you feel comfortable, and if they never know because you didn't feel comfortable and didn't disclose and never see them again, literally no harm has come to them at all. There's no harm that happened there. And like,
Right. That was my thought.
I'm a huge fan of reality TV. I love junk TV, especially dating shows. The Bachelor, Bachelor in Paradise, all those new shitty Netflix ones. I love that stuff. I think it's great. It's really nice for me to turn off my brain and watch that stuff. And all of the time on those shows, now I realize they're not a great example of real dating experience, but I think they do get at one thing. All of the time on there, they'll be like, oh, we've had a few dates. Now I need to tell him something really important, and I'm really scared if he's going to accept me or if it's going to be a problem. Or like, oh, I have to tell him I have a kid, and I'm really worried that that's going to be a problem. Oh, I have to tell him, like Ben mentioned, you know, like fertility issues. I'm worried that that might be a problem. Those things happen all the time on dating shows, and nobody's ever like, wow, you didn't come out of the gate telling him all of your medical history that might make him concerned, because that's an irrational expectation to have. Like, anyone who actually dates normal people and isn't terminally online, washed in like whatever online like discourse bullshit is going on, knows that when you actually go out and date people, you don't tell them everything right away. You suss them out, you get a sense of who they are, you get a sense of if you vibe, if you want to continue. That's normal. That's how dating is supposed to work.
Right. Yeah, because I'd expect, you know, in any relationship, people have things that need to come out later. You don't just wear a sign saying, like, here's my entire life history. Is this okay or not?
Right. Yeah.
But,
like, there's even actually a term for when you give up too much of your personal information too early on. It's called floodlighting. Because, you know, when you turn a floodlight on somebody, what do? They like cover their eyes and turn away. It's like I've had mental health issues and stuff like that. I don't usually come out of the gate being like, oh, by the way, I've been institutionalized, I've been hospitalized for a period of time, because they're probably going to have some biases and assumptions about what that means.
Yeah.
Rather than if I date them, they get to know that I'm like normal, rational, I'm not crazy. And then like a month down the line, I'm like, oh yeah. And then one time I was in like a psychiatric hospital for like a week because I was really depressed. That hits totally different than if you tell them I was institutionalized on the first date, right?
right.
Very, very different impression. Yeah. No,
There's one other part where this kind of intersected, which is like, I feel like dating online for trans people can be kind of weird because on the one hand, you want to date somebody who is going to be accepting, you know, of your body, but also there's a lot of like people that are really weird about it. I know, especially with my like trans femme friends, where there's just like a lot of like trans chasers, and like I'm kind of worried about like putting that I'm trans like on like my public dating profile, because like I don't want to have to deal with those people. So it's like kind of threading the needle between like I want somebody who's like going to accept me, but I don't want somebody who's going to like be fetishistic or like weird about it. You know, it's so tricky.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think, I don't know. I've been talking a lot. I want to give Ben a chance to talk. Do you have any thoughts there, Dr. Ben?
No, not really. I mean, this is where I'm not the best person to be talking about relationships, because like I just avoid them for the most part, because I ain't got time for that. So Arden's probably the better person on this particular topic.
Sure. I don't know. I feel you, Matthew. I'm right there on like, I want somebody who is going to be attracted to me and okay with my body and who I am as a person, but I don't want somebody who's going to have some like fantasy expectation of what interacting with my body looks like. I want them to interact with me like you would any other person and be like, hey, what are you into? What makes you feel good? Like, how can I like be there for you, show up for you, you know? Those things seem like more healthy ways to engage, but it is hard dating as a trans person. It is really hard. Contrary to what people say, there's no shortage of people who are attracted to trans people. They're out there everywhere. The problem is how they treat you as a person. But I think that's also kind of the case when you're in any minority group, you know? You have to walk a line of like, does this person get it? Are they going to be cool, or are they going to be weird about it? So yeah, sorry to hear you're also struggling with that. I've been there, and the dating pool is rough.
Yeah, I do really appreciate your thoughts on it. It does make me more confident that the way of approaching it, I think, has been the right way for me. It doesn't sound like I need to make any like massive changes to the situation.
Nah.
Yeah, I appreciate hearing your thoughts.
Cool. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate you calling in. Best of luck out there.
Thanks. Hope you have a great evening.
You too. Bye. All right. Matthew sounds like a lovely person. All right. We're going to get into those super chats. If you want to send us a super chat of $5 or more, we're about to read it live, and we are starting right freaking now. Want to go first?
You just want me to read the math one.
Yep.
5 pounds from Sean Isherwood. Triangular number. The sum of the first m natural numbers, e.g. 6. The sum of the reciprocals, e.g. 1 over 6. The first n triangular numbers is less than 2. See,
Thanks,
that's
Sean.
cool. So the thing is, okay, so I'm gonna come clean about something for a sec. So I love math, but like with my ADHD, I do not do well with math in my head. I have to like write it down. Like dyscalculia is very common, and I have it. So
Okay.
I need more time to process math, and I need to visually see it on a page and like do the kinesthetic writing of it for it to make sense. So
I think I am the exact same way. Matt and I watched a video like I think probably a year ago now. Obviously, it's not diagnostic, but it was like, oh, do you have dyscalculia? Can you I literally I think I got like 1 question out of 10 correct. I completely bombed it.
Well, to do math, like you have to maintain numbers in your working memory and then manipulate them in your working memory. But if you don't have enough slots in your working memory, you forget what you're like. In order to then do the things with the numbers, you don't remember what numbers you're working with. So it's like you need to have the object permanence of having the numbers in front of you there to unload your working memory so that you can use it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense to the neurotypical people out there. But it's hard. Numbers are very hard.
I've when I took behavioral stats, there was like 3 levels of behavioral stats when I was in college. I got like perfect scores on all of those classes, like 100, like 4.0 grade point average on all of those courses. But if you try to get me to do a math problem like this, I cannot handle it. And I suspect that I might not be as bad at math as I think, and that I, in fact, am actually having like dyscalculia or something going on because I have always, this is why I don't do math, because I'm like, I don't necessarily know what those words mean. So when you're putting numbers and words together, I'm like, I feel like I'm being forced to read a foreign language and like, like have a reaction to it. Because I'm like, I can't hold that in my head and make any meaning of it.
Yeah, math for me changed when it no longer was just doing the thing with the numbers, and when it was applicable to real life for me, like it was in physics, I was like, this makes sense now because I'm just solving a problem, and all I'm doing is I have these parameters and I have this problem, and I just have to fuck with it until something like happens. And like I'm very good at fucking around with things until something happens. Like that's ideal ADHD right there. Is like we're very good at that.
Right.
And we will stay doing that thing until we figure it out. But like if we don't perceive it to be meaningful, or we don't remember what's being done, or it's just too mentally exhausting, then we just don't do it and then we hate it.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate the math, but I would need more time to actually process and before I would understand what Sean is saying.
I don't think I could ever do not ever, but like I'm never gonna get just like math for math's sake, like calculus and that kind of shit. That just will never jive with my brain because I like you're just saying, I need it to apply to something. When it's behavioral statistics, it's so easy because it's like, oh,
yeah,
you know, this population has a statistically significant response to like this other thing, and I'm like, oh my god, it all makes sense when there are actual pieces to the numbers and they're not just floating in the
context.
abstract.
Yeah, it needs context. Like context makes it fun.
Oh my god. Never felt more related to in my whole life.
Yes.
20 pounds from Jackie Greenland. Cannot think of anything interesting to say tonight. You have my money instead. Hashtag T-Vern. Thank you, Jackie. I did see your message. I will get back to that hopefully later tonight. So yes. Clip stuff. So exciting.
10 pounds from Psychophobia. With respect, I don't agree with neopronouns. They often force people to use arbitrary made-up fantasy words. We already have gender-neutral they/them pronouns. Are those not good enough? Well, all pronouns are made up.
Yeah. Also,
all of them are made up. So why are these? Yeah. So why are these made-up ones worse than our other made-up ones? Like I understand like the ease of use point, but I feel like that's a similar cop-out argument to like not wanting to use pronouns for trans people. Like people say it's too hard to do that. Like it's too inconvenient. I don't give a fuck. Like you can think it's inconvenient, but you can still. I still don't agree with your point.
Yeah, I struggle with the I don't agree with pronouns thing. Like,
yeah,
I will say there are some neopronouns that, as far as I can tell, aren't actually pronouns, and that's something that I have a problem with. When you're like changing the linguistic like function of pronouns, it becomes like you can do that, but I don't really understand the purpose because if you're I think I've articulated that about as well as I could, but I think I'm totally comfortable with objecting. It's mostly like the like noun self pronouns that I'm like that. To me, as far as I can tell, that is not a pronoun. That is functionally a nickname.
Yeah,
and I don't understand what the point of trying to make that a pronoun is. But neopronouns in general, I don't have a problem with. It's that specific subset of neopronouns that I think. And I feel like there's a good reason. It's not I don't agree with it, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
$10 from Dade Murphy. Here's $10 because demonetization. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for supporting us in our quest to combat demonetization.
Yeah. It's hard to know why. We all say fuck a lot on the line when we talk about sex and trans issues and political issues, which doesn't help.
We're too controversial.
Yeah, and for years we had no issues with monetization, so it really is weird that it's recent, and when we change things, it doesn't really affect it. Like, it's hard to... It'd be really helpful if YouTube could give us any fucking information, but YouTube is so shitty about that. It really pisses me off. $17.01 from Alyssa. Happy day before first contact day. Hashtag 5th of April 2063. Hashtag live long and prosper. Hashtag peace and long life. Hashtag infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Cool. I hope we get first contact by that point, and I hope they save our incoming climate disaster. You know? Come on, aliens. Give us your technology.
$9.99 from Louise Richardson. I have Zoomed with hospital doctors and staff twice about dealing with trans patients. I've been invited to dinner with doctors and interested parties. It looks like a dull affair. Should I go? Depends on if you want to go. If you think it'll be worth it and it's not too exhausting, then go for it. If you feel like it's too much, or you don't want to, or you don't feel like it's going to be productive, then don't go. It's up to you. You're not obligated to be in positions of advocacy, but if it's something you want to do and you feel like it's meaningful for you to do, then go for it.
Yep. I co-sign that. Thanks, Louise. We have €5 from Jonathan Brockett. Not only did I blaspheme by being trans last Sunday, but I also used pagan symbolism like bunnies and eggs. I'm told that the accusation of paganism associated with those things is a bit of a myth. Not that paganism doesn't have egg and bunny symbolism and rabbit symbolism within the religion, but that the specific connotation of Easter might be different. I don't fucking know. I'm not a historian, so you should probably take whatever I say and just throw it in the trash, to be completely honest, with regard to that topic.
$5 from Monkey Typewriter. Was going to keep teasing Dr. Ben, but then I realized probably as an army doctor dude probably knows many ways to take a person from is to was. And then this hashtag, I don't know that person. That person doesn't work here. So I'm just gonna that's my response to everybody making the chiropractor jokes. It's like I don't know who that person is. Like Ben the chiropractor isn't. I mean, I'm sure there's a Ben the chiropractor out there somewhere, but like I don't know why y'all are bringing him up in this chat because this person doesn't exist here.
It's not you. You're a medical. Well, no, wait. Is it a medical doctor or are you like a DO?
I'm a DO, but they're equivalent. There is in the U.S. there is no difference other than like an extra class, but everything else is the same. So and like the pushback with me against this particular joke, like there is legitimate stigma out there, and it is legitimately a barrier. Like it is a career barrier for people with DO degrees. Like so, it's an actual systemic barrier, and that's why this joke is more problematic than some other ones because like there are still places like with equal residency training, like equal medical school training where like fellowship programs and stuff will like deny DOs a spot just because they're a DO, or they'll say like for an interview they're going to charge $4,000 to a DO student as opposed to an MD. And along with that, there's like a higher percentage of people like in DO programs who come from like less ideal backgrounds because there's a very narrow set of people, like a lot of institutionalized like problems within the whole like medical system, to where a lot of times minorities end up going a DO route because they face fewer barriers to go that way. So just a little taste of the whole stigma regarding that. So that's my response to all the chiropractor jokes here is like it's not relevant to the situation. So it's just kind of a dumb thing to bring up.
Fair. Slap it down.
Yeah.
$4.99 from Louise Richardson. I checked it again. It's a luncheon, 3rd annual UTMB IPEP symposium, poster/abstract presentation and luncheon.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, an abstract presentation is more, well, poster/abstract. I'm sure you're meaning like summary of research, abstract. Yeah, I mean, if you feel up to it, definitely do it. I think you can do a lot of good work doing that and helping inform doctors, because as we pointed out, we didn't point this out. We might have talked about this in private before the show started. I was going to say, there are therapists who consider themselves specialized in LGBT, like LGBT specialists, who really are just people who don't hate LGBT people, and so they think that makes them a specialist. And then when you confront them with any of the actual unique hurdles that LGBT people face, they're like, "What? Oh my god, I've never heard of that. That's awful." I'm like, for real? Come on.
Yeah.
I think this one's you.
Yeah, $10 from I don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm sorry. From Kat. Okay, I suppose I need to lose my super chat flower at some point. Love the hosts and the mods and the chat. # team trans day of visibility.
Hell yeah.
I feel like there's an inside joke with the flower.
I think it just means like they haven't super chatted before, and so they're like, like losing the flowers, like the virginity kind of.
Got it. I'm making the connection. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it. I thought you had super chatted before. I could swear, but nope. Apparently not. Another $4.99 from Louise. Very generous. Thank you, Louise. Okay, I think I just registered for the UTMB event. What the heck? Free lunch. Fair enough. Sure.
$10 from Kaleidoscope Green. Dr. Ben, I recently had to switch to sub-Q testosterone after being on IM for 10 years. Do you know if it's as effective to maintain masculine features or any info? Thank you. The answer is yes, it is. I'm on sub-Q. It's the same. It's the same exact formulation. It's just sub-Q versus IM. They're both absorbed similarly.
Right on.
Yeah.
$5 from Skeptoidius. So I think I pulled something in my back. Ben, you... All right, I'm not gonna read that one. Or is that one?
Yeah, I don't know any. Don't go to a chiropractor. $20 from Dade Murphy. I love you guys. We love you too, Dade. Thank you for another donation.
Yes, thank you very much, Dade. Oh, okay. Well, we've covered that we're not approving of the joke, and the next one is the joke again. So I'm gonna say thank you to Charlie Carrot for the $10. Not gonna put it up on screen though. I'll give you this one though. $10 from Charlie Carrot. Love you both. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Yeah. So I realized the message didn't get out to everyone. I think Ben is expressing that he doesn't like the joke and would wish you guys would stop. And I realize you guys mean it in good fun. But if it's not being received in good fun, then it's kind of just not really serving the purpose you think it is.
Yeah. So $9.99 from Cassidy. Dr. Benny said how queer trans individuals tend to be neurodivergent. What is the correlation science behind this? Like, so there isn't any like objective data beyond like there seems to be like some correlation, but the thing isn't necessarily with the fact that these are linked in themselves. But I think with regard to people being openly queer and openly neurodivergent, the fact that people in either category are already violating a social norm, if you will, by being the one. And so they're more likely to think outside of the box with the other things. Whereas when people are like have more narrow thought processes, like when they think like within the box and they kind of live within the box, it's harder to see beyond kind of what's in front of you, where neurodivergent people tend to excel at more abstract thinking and thinking of things that are outside what's right in front of us. In the same way that queer people are also doing that more frequently because they're not adhering to a certain norm. And I think like people with perspectives outside of the norm tend to have like an easier time finding other places where the pattern doesn't make sense. And so I think it's not necessarily that these are like linked identities or like linked conditions, if you will, but I think that like having that perspective leads you to recognize similar perspectives in other avenues more easily than if you weren't aware of them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Arden, I don't know if Arden has like different thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I've seen similar data that just seems to suggest there is a correlation, but there's not really like a causal factor that we're able to identify. And so it's really just speculation. And that makes sense to me. I mean, it's not completely speculation. We know things about neurodivergent brains and how they think, like you were pointing out, and that we can like make those connections. But like, yeah. No,
and it's just a hypothesis that like logically makes sense, but like there probably has yet to be studies particularly related to this.
Yep. Alrighty, we've got $5 from the Ben B. Came in late, but I'm glad I caught y'all. I missed the last couple of weeks, and I missed Takis so much. Love y'all. Well, thank you for being back here, Ben B. We appreciate you.
$10 from Dade Murphy. Shout out to Calasia, Charlotte, Monkey, Granny, Arden, Ben, I got cookies, Jason, Paul, and all you heathens. I love it. The date is using this super chat to shout out other people in the side chat.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dave.
Love that.
I appreciate
Love
the
it.
support. We've got $10 from Make New Pieces. Trans rights, hashtag Team Arden. True. Trans rights.
$5 from Red Box of Doom. Great show as always. Love the spice from Ben today. Made me feel less bad for doing the same things. Hashtag Team Arden. Always. PS. Best mods ever.
Sometimes you gotta bring the spice.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe this is a moment to talk about the fact that sometimes people don't realize that they criticize our approach a lot. We get a lot of comments from people criticizing our approach and not criticizing our arguments or the facts, but criticizing our approach. And that really bothers me because, like, we're fucking human beings and not every day is going to be perfect mood-wise. And I don't necessarily see a demonstration of it being a problem to dig in on somebody. People are... Like, I think this is kind of a purity culture thing that some people haven't unpacked, but this notion that you just have to be kind and accepting and polite to everyone all the time is nonsense. You can be angry. You have anger in you. It is an emotion. You can feel it. It's a matter of what you do with it. Can you harness it into something productive? Or are you needlessly attacking someone to make them feel bad about themselves? Like, those are different uses of anger. And sometimes people need to be berated a little bit to shake them or the surrounding community into realizing whatever that person did to, get that reaction, I don't want to replicate that, So yeah.
Nice is not always good. Like, we tend to equate nice and good, and they're not the same. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
All right. We've got £5 from Sean Isherwood. Don't worry that you don't get maths right away. My super chats are often very difficult, chosen to be pretty concepts, fun, worth thinking about. Yeah, no, I appreciate that you send them because I think it's good fun kind of with the audience that, like, and you, that people know that I'm not going to understand from your super chat what you're talking about, and that's kind of the bit, right? So I appreciate it.
$9.99 from Jason. Home with an icky cold, but not soliciting medical advice. Just enjoying some great content and learning stuff. And every day is Trans Day of Visibility. Yes, and some days I wish we were less visible, but
True.
It is what it is.
I'd rather be visible by, like, my community and immediate friends, not by, like,
randos in the bathroom.
Yeah, $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Ben at the beginning of the show, people are trash. Me 2 hours later, shit, he meant me. Apologies, sir.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're doing the bit that was all in good fun. So I'm not mad at individual people.
Yeah, now you guys know.
Except for the transphobic assholes. I'm mad at them as individual people. But
True. I hate all the transphobic assholes. $10 from William Matt. I'm fully using they, them pronouns now. Right on. Awesome. Good for you, William. I'll try to remember that. I try not to generally gender commenters because I don't know anything about y'all on that level, except for, like, Raven 200 puts he, him in his username. So that one's a given. And, like, some of you I know, but yeah, I appreciate that. And I will do my best to remember that in the future, but congrats.
$10 from Skeptoidius. Under capitalism, you too can pay a wealthy corporation for a product you'll rarely use, all for the privilege of staying alive, all while paying thousands of dollars out of pocket. Absolutely. The rules are made up and they're stupid, and there's not a lot of good reason to do things this way.
True. $5 from William Matz. Ben, do you need a virtual hug?
Yeah, I'll take one. This week has been awful.
Lots of virtual hugs for Ben. $10 from... Oh, wait, no, this one's you.
This is mine. From $10 from a Norp Florpson. My brother works in an ER and claims he encounters a lot of trans people who will not share their born sex despite clarifying sex isn't gender. Is concerned about wokeness. Your thoughts? Oh, That's my alarm telling me to let my cat out of the room that I lock her in. So I'll remember to do that. Yeah, I mean, I have a question, number one, of what specific job this brother has in the ER, because literally not everybody that works in the ER needs to know everything about people's medical history. If he's a physician, there are certain ways to approach this topic without being a bigot. And there are ways to get this information, like, again, without, you don't. And here's a problem with, again, our need to put people in buckets. Because you can ask somebody what sex they were assigned at birth, and it's still not necessarily going to give you the most accurate assumptions in your mind. Like, most people hear that somebody was assigned female at birth, and they're going to assume that they have 100% like congruent female traits, and that is not accurate. So our whole system of how we like assume based on people's like category of biological sex is super flawed. And so what a better idea is to kind of individually gather data about like what organs this person has, what hormones this person has. Like, chromosomes really aren't that important for the majority of this, because they're really important to determine the hormones and anatomy piece. So you can gather a lot of this history by, and it's funny because I did a whole video about this like a long time ago. You can get this information by the things that you're already doing as a physician, because you are asking people about why they're there. You're asking them about their medical history. You're asking about them about their medications, about the surgeries that they've had. So you can gather what's going on with this person based on that. And you can even gather a lot of data about certain things that you might be concerned about based on simple questions. Like, is it possible that you could be pregnant? You can ask that question without implying somebody's gender. Or the way that they were born. It's just a question of, is there a possibility that you could be? And it's really not stigmatizing to ask that question in that way. So like the thing is, a lot of people in medicine rely on assumptions, and that's bullshit. They need to stop doing that. There are better ways to do this. So my thoughts are, based on what this comment is saying initially, I'm not convinced this person is a physician and needing to know this information, because they could gather that information without asking it in this way. Secondly, like, this is just a dishonest thing if you're concerned about wokeness when you're trying to engage in patient care. And it doesn't sound like they're actually concerned about the information itself and are more angry about the fact that trans people are going to show up. So,
yeah. I also like... One, like, a lot of trans people will not share their sex. Like, okay, if they're not sharing that information, how do you know, unless you're asking those other questions? Or are you just making assumptions? Also, like, there are a lot of situations in which I've had medical providers ask me my assigned sex where it was, like, not relevant or necessary at all. Like, when I went to the otolaryngologist, I don't know how you say that, because I have a hearing disability, they asked for my sex assigned at birth, and I lied. And if they asked me on it, I would have lied, because there's already a barrier of discrimination there, and it doesn't apply. There's nothing about my ears that has anything to do with my birth sex, like that doctor needs to know. And so it's also like, why are you concerned about it? It's none of your fucking business, and unless it's like immediately relevant, like, oh, they're having assigned male symptoms of a heart attack, but they won't say that they're a male. But it's like, okay, then why don't you like look into it anyway? Like,
yeah, and either way, like atypical chest pain, it doesn't matter what their birth sex is. I'm going to treat it like atypical chest pain, and like my differentials are the same. It is this cardiac or is this not cardiac? Like, there are common presentations, but it doesn't matter what you were assigned. You could still be that uncommon presentation no matter whatever the fuck. So like these arguments trying to say that it's so relevant to know this information are great examples of like, it's very rarely necessary to know this information. It's like how we're still getting over the fact that people think you need to ask about race for medical reasons, and like beyond social determinants of health, you do not. Like your race does not impact your kidney function. Like it does not impact your bone density. Like it doesn't, like other than social factors that you could have with any different person that was under those same social pressures. Like these myths will not die, and this is something that we're going to keep having to fight because it's a problem, and these myths won't die, but it's not relevant at all. Like unless, like, and even like I said, like if it's something with abdominal pain and you're concerned about, is this a pregnancy? Go down the route of pregnancy. Like just get to the fucking point of your question instead of beating around the bush to try to judge people.
Yeah.
And people will understand. And if you have a trans person that you're seeing and you're honest about why you are asking the question, people are often willing to go with you if they understand that it is a safety concern.
Oh yeah, 100%. If at the ENT he was like, "Hey, I don't mean this to be offensive. But I need to know what your assigned sex at birth was because that might indicate something about treatment, yada yada yada." I would almost certainly tell him. But it's like, you don't need to, like, it's almost not ever relevant on a form. I've had it before where I filled out the form correctly, and then they still asked me if I was pregnant. Like, literally don't have the physical capability of being pregnant. So, no. I just find this whole notion that there's an ER where trans people are all the time lying about their born sex is just that's I think that's made up. I think it happened like once, maybe twice, and your brother is like down an anti-woke spiral and extrapolated from that. But that might be a good topic to call in on. $5 from
for real.
I Got Cookies, Dr. Ben. I've been having explosive diarrhea for a week now. Do you know what that could be? Just kidding. I'm an idiot. Have my money. Jen, you don't have to buy super chats. You could tag me and I would probably still read it out live. I love you and I appreciate you, but seriously.
All right. $4.99 from Stacy, 1904. Virtual hug for Dr. Ben. Thank you for the virtual hug. I appreciate it.
Sweet. Alrighty. Thank you guys so much. That was the last super chat of the day. Thank you so much to Jess from Canada for call screening. You are so awesome. Thank you. Oh yes, I want to mention it again. Thank you, Jen. See, look, Jen tagged me and said demonetization. I think that was a reminder to let you guys know, again, that we've been struggling with demonetization on the channel. This really impacts our income generation. The first 12 hours are the most important. So if you are able to, please consider supporting us on Patreon. That is the most efficient use of your money to support the network. So we would highly recommend you go there to support us. It would really mean a lot to help us deal with this wave of demonetization that we're dealing with. Also, you can go to limemerch.com and get yourself some cool demon head and boss of atheism shirt if you want to. That would also help support the network. Thank you to all the mods for keeping chat respectful, and thank you to everyone who called in today. It was a lot of good discussions. And thank you, Ben, for showing up here even though you were not in the mood. I appreciate it. You were a great contribution as always. Do you have anything you want to sign off with?
Am I supposed to say anything?
I was expecting you to give a little sign off or something. But...
Sorry, I was distracted by the people bothering me in the side chat. But yeah, I don't know. I was angry this week. I'll probably be less angry next week when I'm on leave, but I'm not apologizing for it. That's where I'm leaving it tonight.
Don't. Yeah. Oh, and Jen says, no, that's why I sent a super chat was because of the demonetization. Well, thank you, Jen. We appreciate it. We love you. Thank you guys so much. And we'll be back here at the normal time, 2 p.m. Central Time next week with Ben and Katie. So see you guys later. And, oh, there's that song. It's been bugging out lately. I don't know what the hell that is. If you want to get your name scrolling up, by the way, speaking of Patreon, that's how you do it. Go support us on patreon.com/calltheline. See you guys later.